Hello and welcome to this session. It's a special session within the program that involves a global project that we've been working on. My name is Chris Oldland. I'm the Editor-in-Chief for Field Service News, and I'm joined today by Jan van Ven, who is the founder of More Momentum. And this is a project that has been run across 3 different global regions, across the US and North American region, the Asia Pacific region, and of course Europe, which is where Jan and I are based as well. Quite frankly, it's no surprise that every single region, every single field service organization has felt the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. What we wanted to do, and the reason why we've come together, is to really get an understanding of the global feeling amongst field service organizations and to see how we are all building towards the recovery. It's been a detailed project. It's been a project that has looked at a number of key elements, but in this session, we're just going to give you some of the helicopter findings, some of the key trends that we've spotted. And Jan's going to be guiding us through some of those trends as we go through a slide deck that brings some of those trends and those highlighted research findings to the fore. There will be a further session, which I thoroughly recommend everybody joins as well, and there'll be links to join that later, where we will be doing a bit of a deeper dive into some of the hows around the building the recovery. But today we want to just look at some of the key findings of what that impact was, assessing the damage and looking how we innovate our way out of the COVID-19 crisis. Jan, thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been a pretty intense period across the project, and we've got some great findings to share with the group today. Perhaps you'd just like to give us a very brief introduction to yourself, though.
Yes, thank you, Chris. So my name is Jan van Veen. I'm founder and managing director of More Momentum. And More Momentum is, in essence, a kind of a community and consultancy helping manufacturing companies to accelerate the way they innovate. And key themes are innovating their services, digital solutions. And one of the things we see is a big challenge and increasingly important is capabilities of manufacturing companies to be able to innovate the business model at a high pace, ongoing, and from the inside. And that's exactly what we within our community are focusing on. And that's also the reason we have done this research together with Field Service Asia and Field Service News, to have a wide community to capture insights, but also disseminate and share it again.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Jan, let's dive straight into it then. It's a shortish session and we've got a huge amount to cover. So let's look at the first slide.
Yes. So this is one of, let's say, the first few questions from the survey, where we have asked what are, let's say, some key trends and developments you expect and envision or see happening from COVID-19. And one of the interesting things here is you see that a lot of people and companies see that there are going to be some substantial but also long trends and developments being triggered from COVID-19. And so we see that they're expecting acceleration of the adoption of digital technologies and remote services by the clients for maintaining the assets and equipment, but not only for maintaining the assets and equipment, but also to optimize their processes and business functions. And so both are 90 and 84%, which is quite a high number. Then we also see that people are expecting that there will be an increasing scarcity of digital skills and competencies in the market, which are becoming more and more critical for manufacturing companies and their service businesses. And related to that, just a little bit less than half are expecting an increasing competition coming from outside their industry, from let's say, digital native service providers who are working to help the manufacturing companies to the clients of manufacturers to optimize the processes with digital solutions, tools, and capabilities. And maybe one other thing is the trend that clients are now getting used to do things more themselves, like maintaining the assets with some support from manufacturing companies and service operations of them, but do more themselves. And that a lot of manufacturing companies expect that this is going to stay or maybe come back a bit, but it's not just a temporary shift. So I think these are quite interesting facts. It means that they are all going to impact the business model with revenue streams and the earning models of manufacturing companies.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the conversations I've been having everywhere is amongst the, well, one of the themes that's been echoed across almost every conversation is that people's 5-year, 3-year, 1-year digital transformation plans have just been accelerated beyond belief. So I'm not surprised to see that first headline figure. I think just jumping down to the bottom there as well, it's interesting because this is essentially, you know, the self-service model is something that we're not really familiar with, or at least we weren't until fairly recently. And even though we're sitting at what I'm assuming that's looking somewhere around the probably what the 27, 28% mark there, I would imagine that's probably quite a significant shift. Is that something that you're finding in your wider conversation, Jan, that this is, you know, that number would have been much, much lower just 4 months ago, I would imagine?
Yeah, I think so. We haven't measured that before from a survey, but of course we work with a lot of manufacturing companies, and there you see that only a few are strong in having these kind of alliance contracts or partnership contracts where they support their clients' maintenance departments to do the maintenance themselves, have some kind of third line support, second line support, education, troubleshooting tools on a kind of portal function. There are companies who are quite strong in that. Also coming from the idea, if clients want to do it themselves, don't try to beat them, but support them in it. But that's just a few. And now you indeed see that shift. And now from conversations, I have a lot of conversations now with service leaders who really see that this is going to stay and this is going to have a big impact and that on their value proposition, but also their internal organization, which means your field service workforce, you're going to have a much lower demand for that. So how are you going to utilize those people? How are you going to make that shift from support from the inside instead of doing it for your clients in the field? So absolutely. I also sense that a lot of manufacturing companies and service leaders try to resist this trend because it is going to impact their revenue. If your revenue is now hours in the field and your clients are going to do that themselves, yeah, where are you going to get your money from now? Eh? So you see still a lot of people trying to stay away from that, avoid it, instead of embracing it and come up with solutions to support your clients and still make some revenue from it.
Yeah, there's some very big decisions, some very key thinking that needs to go on. You know, how do we avoid the Kodak moment? Perhaps is one way of looking at that. The flip side is, you know, can we really afford to continue to maintain our expertise and our knowledge if we don't have those revenue streams coming in? It
is a challenge about finding other revenue streams for it. And the transition is now making sure that you have your offerings to support those clients who wish to do it themselves, still continue to do the service for the clients who want to do it, want you to do it, and then see how the market is shifting. But you have to find other revenue streams with other value propositions. I think that is the essence of this message here. Yeah.
Okay. Let's look on the next slide then, Jan. Let's take a look at the set of data.
Yeah. So, what we said before, the first slide, were kind of negative or threatening impacts. On the other hand, we also see many opportunities. A very obvious one with a very high number of percentages, 63, well, more, it's close to 3/4, that they see that there's an opportunity to increase the margins in your service operations because you can have more efficient service delivery by doing more remotely and using digital tools. So that's all an efficiency gain. And the interesting thing here is to believe that if you are more efficient, that you will be able to capture that extra margin instead of reducing the prices for your clients. So that is one of the most important opportunities being seen. the other hand, we also see quite a few, just a little bit more than half of the service leaders see that actually there will be emerging new markets for new kind of solutions to support your clients with different technologies and solutions. And that could be some kind of performance solution supporting in how to optimize their processes. So there will be new markets to dive into. And so that's the two middle bars, approximately half. And then we also see that there are just a little bit less than half of the service leaders who also see that their clients need some support for their digital transformation, and that potentially they can provide some solutions and consultancy services to help their clients make that transition. And again, those are revenue streams as well. So it's not just negative impact and threats, there are also some opportunities. Besides the first one, it means you have to develop your service offerings beyond, let's say, the business as usual from the last decades.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in, within any crisis, there's opportunity. It's a very clear kind of balance between the two. There always will be opportunities. It's interesting that one of the things that strikes me about this set of data is it really reinforces the fact that this isn't something that's restricted to any one vertical. This isn't anything that's, every organization is facing that. So that's not just us as service providers, but that's also our clients, and we're embedded in this. I think one of the interesting things is, as we look, we're staring down the barrel of a pretty significant economic downturn on a global scale, and historically the precedent is that will drive us towards a service-based economy, at least in the short term. So I think absolutely right now it's vital that service organizations are able to increase the efficiency of their service delivery, but that, of course, we all know that the margins on service versus product a much more, a much healthier profit. One thing that I think is quite interesting here, Jan, that I'd like to just kind of zoom in on and get a little bit of your input in, is this point, emerging new markets for new types of solutions. And that kind of, to me as well, kind of falls into the concept a lot of companies are having of, do we go to remote first as a default? Of course, if that sea change happens and we become more accustomed to that, that means that we can do an awful lot more in terms of geographic reach than perhaps we could have before, as the acceptance of that approach from our customers comes in. What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so the shift to remote, by the way, this was a trend which was already evolving for more than 10 years. And in that sense, I also believe, just as a side note, that in this economic downturn that you will see some innovation accelerating, but also some disruption. Probably in this economic recession, that will be even more than before, because we actually already had a kind of latent disruption, digital disruption happening anyway. And all those disruptions go slowly and all of a sudden they go up and they accelerate. It's an exponential development. And this economic recession and COVID-19 can accelerate that hockey stick, that's ramping up. So shifting to remote, absolutely, that will have a big impact on your regional geographic reach. Also difficulties to reaching certain regions with travel, etc., restrictions in this COVID-19 time. But it's also going to shift actually the kind of offering you're going to provide to your clients, and also how they're going to perceive the value. So if now the essence of your services is we come to your on-site to do whatever is needed to be done on your machine, the value proposition is not that clear, other than you will come there, it will cost something, so it makes sense to pay something for it, and we need that maintenance. While if you say, hey, but we're going to impact this parameter in your business model, be it uptime, or being it overall equipment efficiency, or being it process improvement, then you have another kind of value proposition, which is much more related to an outcome or a performance KPI of your clients. And then it's much easier to articulate that value, even though it's a piece of software or a remote service or what have you. So the impact is much bigger in that sense, if that is the answer to your question.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's take a look at the next slide, please.
Yeah. So the interesting point of this question slide is that we also asked and discussed, by the way, and maybe that's, I should have said that in the beginning, we did a survey, something like 94 participants, but we also had quite a few interviews and group discussions to have kind of deep dive conversation. And one of the things we have been discussing as well is, okay, let's take a step back. So we see these trends and developments going on and opportunities. What shift does your company as a whole envision? Not just service, but the company as a whole. And one of the top things being mentioned there is being a shift from being pure an equipment provider with some support services, maintenance service, to kind of integrated solution provider. And integrated solution being it's hardware technology, it is data, software, service, so also a digital service provider, but that full package to have a remarkable solution for particular customer problems. So making that shift from we provide a piece of metal to we have a complete solution for that operation in your business, dear client. So quite a few manufacturing as a whole see that kind of shift. And that's good news because that means that service is becoming more and more strategically relevant in the total business model of a company. Also quite interesting is that 49%, so that is half of the businesses say also that they want to be the first coming up with new innovative solutions. So that's an interesting one because, well, it's quite difficult to be with that big group first. So, but that also means that innovation capability has to be a top priority. So that is an interesting question. Are they working on that innovation capability to indeed be the first? And another question is, do you really need to be the first or do you want to be the second and more successful? So those are some interesting conversations. But anyway, half say we want to be the first with those innovation solutions to the market. Also more customization instead of standardization. Half, just a little bit less of the half say, in essence, we have to shift to more customized solutions. And also 25% a quarter, so that's not a very big group. Say, hey, but we actually have to have a look at the entire ecosystem of our value chain, of our industry. We have all different kind of actors, and everybody has a role. And actually, one of our opportunity is to expand our role and relevance in that entire value chain. Also, that is an interesting one because that means either or a combination of you have to have a widest portfolio of technology and equipment to cover a broader part of the function of your end clients or the clients of their clients, or it's also about digital solutions and services, etc. And then of course there are also a couple of companies who have the opposite idea. No, we need to more standardize our solution. We have to specialize more. We have to move to equipment provider and make things more simple. But that's just a minority, which doesn't mean that for some companies that could be a good strategy. So I think this is an interesting perspective. It's not about service, but I do think there are a lot of opportunities for service to hook into these kind of developments.
Well, the one thing that this seems to suggest to me, and followers of either Field Service News or your own work or regular attendees to Field Service Asia, we can't avoid the fact that the constant conversation across the last 5 years at least has been around the importance of a shift towards servitization. It's become the dominant topic. And I've seen that conversation evolve from the corner stream in the conference to the keynote on the main stage. Do you think that these kind of results are showing that perhaps COVID-19 is the ultimate pull factor for companies moving towards servitization?
To be very honest, I don't think it's the cause. I think it's more a trigger to accelerate. Yeah. Because that trend was happening anyway. It's more about accelerating that trend. But that does mean that COVID-19 today is very crucial because if we now indeed see that exponential curve ramping up, then now we will see a big discrepancy starting to exist between the leaders who are addressing this and embracing that and the laggards who are kind of delaying that. And if that difference becomes too big, then at some point, a lot of companies will really start falling back behind the competition, not being able to reap any kind of benefits from these opportunities, and just a few ones really benefiting from it and growing and becoming much more stronger, which, by the way, not necessarily only manufacturing companies in the industry, but also think about the digital service providers from outside your industry, that maybe they are the guys who are going to really benefit from it. It all depends on how companies are going to respond to that and how they are really going to innovate their business model.
Yeah.
And I also believe if we talk about servitization, we should not just think about service around our product. So, for example, a product as a service and leasing, CapEx, OpEx. I think part of that game is also see how you can expand the scope of kind of relevance and problems you solve with your clients, looking at digital solutions, how they're going to continuously optimize their processes. Like Philips Healthcare said, the digitalization is now that far you can't think about without service. But most of the service solutions they're developing is not about maintenance of equipment, but helping clients, healthcare providers, and citizens, either being ill or trying to live healthier, have solutions and services to solve those problems, which has nothing to do with the equipment itself. And I think that is the real opportunity.
Just a very quick side point on this as well, looking at that data. It's good that it's 49% of the organizations that want to be innovators, because that leaves us exactly 51% who won't be. If those numbers had gone the other way, we'd have a challenge. But look, that's something we can dive into a little bit further on in the latter session. Let's go to the next slide.
Yes. So, okay, we just now talked about companies as a whole, which would be more or less, let's say, the vision being resonated and communicated by the board, executive board. And now have a look closer on what is the focus and also the vision of service departments and service leaders. And there, to be honest, I do see on average some discrepancy. So we see manufacturing companies moving to integrated solutions, etc. And then here, if you look at the top part, 3/4, one of the important focus is still developing predictive maintenance solutions, which in essence is using technology to do better what you were doing anyway. So it is a sustaining innovation, which means sustain what you're doing it better. And the question is, how much growth opportunity will there really be? Quite often, sustaining innovations lead to efficiency. Big risk, what you typically see happening is that predominantly your clients benefit from, because they will get lower prices. Then looking at the more innovations beyond business as usual, see how your clients apply the technology and products you bring. So that could be training. So that is still quite a kind of common service. You see a lot of companies, manufacturers providing. Half say that is another very important priority. And then all the other ones, they drop below 1/3 or a quarter, looking at, okay, but we have to provide solutions beyond just condition and maintenance of equipment. Interesting one, CapEx, OpEx, helping them in that shift. Only a quarter. Well, if we talk about servitization, OpEx, etc., that should be much higher priority, I would expect, and it's only 25%. Helping clients to do maintenance themselves, solutions and offerings for that, 22% are working on that, which I think is discrepancy with how to which extent we see that clients are wanting to do that. So that was something like 35% or so. Innovating your earnings model, 22%. Well, if we see that there are things going to happen which will have impact on our revenue streams, we must also develop our value propositions and our earnings model. So I think those bottom ones are the opportunity to start embracing more for the most manufacturers.
Yeah, I would suggest here, and I often think, and I know perhaps you have a similar lens, because the companies that I tend to speak to tend to be best in class. That it's the very definition of, the companies that I would report to, but equally it's the same as the organizations in your community by default tend to be best in class because they're investing and they're coming together and they're sharing knowledge around driving, service innovation. But what this suggests to me is there's a lot of companies still out there where service isn't quite plugged into the business. It's still very operational. It's still around, the fundamental nuts and bolts. They may be evolving from the traditional break fix to predictive maintenance, but the service organization isn't thinking or isn't involved in the conversations that revolve around these paradigm shifts that we need to be seeing. What's your thoughts on that, Jan?
I think that's a very relevant point, what you're saying. And we haven't touched in these kind of questions, but we have been talking and discussing it. Let's say that the transformation in these companies is to become more service-focused and oriented. But now I'm actually moving on to one of the next questions. And so the whole company has to better understand what is the vision of our value proposition and business model of the future, how our clients' needs going to change. If the vision of the company is still about products and the innovation is still around products and technology, and service is good for maintenance, and that's a good revenue stream, quite profitable, so let that just do its thing, then it's quite difficult to move beyond the picture we're seeing right here. Related to that also is how many manufacturing companies or service operations have a proper service marketing department or service development team who are looking at what are our service value propositions for the future, how we're going to develop the capabilities internally, how we're going to sell it, how do we going to bring it to the market, and how are we going to integrate that with the overall business model of our company. Those are just a few companies who are quite strong in it, and then you see that those are the leaders, and they typically also have the service leader in the executive board. There you see that in the annual reports to the shareholders, that service is one of the 3 top priorities in the summary, and has a decent paragraph and some financials around it. And let's face it, it's not the big majority of companies who have that already, but I do believe that is a journey and a challenge they have to work on.
Yeah. I one thing I've seen recently, only just started to see emerge, which I thought was really interesting, is the emergence of a chief revenue officer, CRO, which basically combines the 2 CSO roles, which always confuses me because I'm a simpleton. But the chief sales officer and the chief service officer, which again, the chief service officer is a fairly rare beast anyway. But I really think that's the future when we're talking about these organizations having that overall all-encompassing vision, is that chief revenue officer, which really brings service and sales together. Let's take a look at the final slide, Jan.
Yeah. So then, and this is a bit already as a sneak preview into the how. So just now we're talking about what should happen and the change in manufacturing companies and in the industries. Just a sneak preview about, okay, what are some challenges then on how to do that. So just a few things we've picked out from the multiple questions and the topics being discussed is that top score, a bit more than half say innovating our value propositions to address the changing needs of our clients. That is indeed a main challenge and critical success factor. About the same, say, and acquiring digital capabilities and competencies is going to be quite crucial. We see the leading manufacturing companies also having an M&A strategy around that, because are you able to develop those skills and capabilities yourself organically quick enough? Probably not if things are going to accelerate. So maybe it's time to acquire that companies with those capabilities. And then the interesting ones, about half say establishing service culture across the entire company. Service thinking, that doesn't mean service in maintenance service, but we do more than just providing equipment and software. Establishing innovation culture, a bit more than 40% as one of the challenges and critical success factors to be addressed. And then below 20%, we also see, and this is about, let's say, the innovation capabilities they are applying. We see that very few say, hey, but we set up entrepreneurial satellite teams to build that new value proposition, to prove it's very relevant and test it, retest it, and the kind of lean startup approach to develop something new at a low risk. And without being held back by the rest of the organization. It's only 20% of the companies who are doing that. Similarly, having a process of rapidly experimenting, testing, learning, and that way finding the right solutions and models. Design thinking, similarly, it's also 13% of the companies who are applying that. And those are the innovation capabilities who are going to really enable you to move beyond business as usual. And then we see that very few companies are using that. So again, I think that is an interesting opportunity to take out of this for any manufacturing company and service operation to work on and make the service innovation happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, kind of looking across these, I think the best way to approach this final slide is just to say to everybody on the session, make sure you come along and sign up for the latter session, the final session, which again, there are links included, because this is where we will be diving into some of the critical how we tackle those. But Jan, just to give us a little wrap up towards the end of this session, just pull it all together for us.
Yeah, so I would say, looking at what we've been summarizing just now, looking at the conversations you are having with your community, but also we with our community and all participants in research, I would say some key takeaways is try quickly and keep on working on that to expand the scope of the innovation beyond the business as usual, being we provide equipment and maintenance service, very smart, predictive maintenance services, but beyond that. So what is digital? How are your clients going to use digital to optimize their processes? How can you, with your knowledge, support that? How can you develop new intellectual property to have a proper reason for existence in that space? So I think that expanding the scope, look broader than just the piece of equipment and how to maintain it. The other one is we know a lot. We talk a lot about the what. We talk about servitization, what that is, how that could look like. But we do not spend much time internally, but also when we network with our peers, but how to do that. What kind of challenges are you going to encounter? How are you going to overcome them? If we do not address those questions, we always know a lot, but in the end do too little. So we have to close that knowing-doing gap. So let's make sure that we not only know more, but do more things. And look at the culture, your habits and practices around service, business, digital solutions, and innovation capabilities. And finally, what you typically see is innovation initiatives are a piece of technology or a process or something digital. And in the end, the successful innovations have a much richer portfolio of aspects. Things as a value proposition. How are you going to sell it? How are you going to capture the value with your pricing, your earnings model, and your sales capabilities? How are you going to make a brand around it? How are you going to differentiate from your competitors with that? So make it rich. So if we have this great technology opportunity, okay, but what's the value proposition? Which problem of our clients are we going to solve? What else should we add to it? And how are we going to make some money out of it? How are we going to sell it? Make that richer. And in the end, there are something like 21 tracks of innovation you can apply in a service innovation initiative. And most companies tend to use just one or two. So, and ideally you have 5, 6, 7 in each initiative. So those would be the 3 things as a takeaway recommendation to share with the people watching this session.
Perfect, excellent. Yeah, I think my final takeaway, I'm just going to echo what you said there, and I'm going to simplify it as is my way. What are the challenges of your clients that you are able to solve, and how can you make money doing it? I really do think that when we boil everything down, that is the 2 questions we need to be asking. But for now, a very good introduction to some of the key headline findings of this global research project brought to you across a partnership of More Momentum, Field Service Asia, and of course Field Service News. And Jan, excellent job bringing some insight and bringing some of those headlines to life. Thank you ever so much.
It was a pleasure. Yeah. Thank you. Pleasure.